Hard Hat's all about showing up to play hard, doing what it takes to win.
If you want to cement legacy, win another.
He's your third center.
You don't want to puff him up too much, but it's hard not to.
This is maybe the most I've ever agreed with you.
Hey, Bobby Manning here, and welcome to a Friday edition of the Garden Report as we record this. And look who it is, John Karalis from the Locked On Celtics podcast, as well as Boston Sports Journal. Great to finally have you on, John. There's been a lot of fans of both of our shows who have wanted to see this for a long time. So
I have heard that we should do a Manning Karalis crossover. So here we are.
And the timing is for a Clippers story, which is
absolutely wild.
Yeah, so everyone should know the story by now. I wonder how much the average fan cares about this story a ton, especially the average Celtics fan. But from a journalistic standpoint, from just a league-wide intrigue standpoint, it's fascinating what's going to happen here and what all the details we're going to find out about this Kawhi Leonard backdoor deal allegedly that happened here through this aspiration company that got him, as you reported, upwards of $50 million on top of the max contract that he signed with the Clippers here. And the big question now is this going to be cap circumvention that in the last major case got a contract voided and 5 first-round picks docked in the Joe Smith controversy? And so you've dived into this a little bit at this point. Do you think that's where this is going to head?
I think at the heart of this, we're being asked to believe by Steve Ballmer and the people defending themselves that a company, through 2 separate transactions, one public, one not so public, decided that they wanted to pay, or promise Kawhi Leonard $48 million to do nothing, to go through the process without the normal kind of vetting, without the normal involvement of management, without any of that stuff, to pay a portion of that out of a founder's personal portfolio of stock, and to be like, oh yeah, no, hey, I don't know how they structured their deals. I don't know. Like, that's Steve Ballmer and ESPN. I don't know what they did. They're a bunch of scammers. And so we're being asked to just kind of like blanketly believe that. And to me, it's a big pill to swallow. And so I do think the league is investigating. And I do think the league is going to have a hard time kind of putting this together and just saying, oh yeah, this was just a normal deal. Ballmer has, or is trying to establish, some plausible deniability. I have a company here that I really believed in. My family believes in sustainability. We want to be, good residents of the planet Earth. And so I invested in what I believe to be a company working towards that. Okay, fine. I introduced them to Kawhi Leonard, which is legal. Okay, fine. Totally legal. But then that's where everything starts to fall apart. And that's where I have a problem with, how this all played out and the legality of it all, as in terms of the salary cap and circumvention of the cap. And it doesn't matter if other teams do it. These are the guys that are kind of under investigation for it. And it has long reaching implications, from Kawhi Leonard choosing a team over other teams, which changed the course of where free agents signed and trades that were made. And, you can start pulling at that thread and saying Luka Doncic might never be a Laker if Kawhi Leonard was a Laker. You can really start going down a lot of roads of what could have happened if Kawhi chose a different team, if this was part of the selling point. So yeah, I think NBA fans should be interested in all of this, because, if this is a practice that is somehow condoned, then I think, teams are going to feel like they can get away with some things, and you just don't want to set that precedent.
Well, the few Celtics fans I've seen weigh in on this story, the biggest question's been like, why couldn't we do this for Drew Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis?
Because that's what a fan's like. It's like, well, geez, why couldn't have we gotten Kristaps Porzingis to like sign for less and then have him do like some North End restaurant that whatever. Like, I get it. I totally get it.
Yeah, for sure. And there's two things at play here. When it comes to what the NBA is going to be able to find, because there's obviously, Pablo's podcast was awesome. Had a lot of documentation, communication between Ballmer and the company, and then the sources, and you've spoken to one as well inside the company, who were specifically saying this Kawhi deal was for the purpose of cap circumvention. That's what we were told.
Yeah.
And this money has to get. This was a guy who was really emphasized within this company in terms of getting him paid, even when the company started to fall apart. And he wasn't doing anything, which I know you wrote in your story that would, some people were saying that it was a matter of like brand cohesion and all that sort of thing. Fit the brand. It's still hard to stack up how you would sign someone for $50 million and then just be like, you know what, maybe we won't use them publicly at all. Because there were other celebrities being used widely publicly, like Robert Downey Jr.
This is the thing. So we're getting like conflicting stories here a little bit, and it's in Steve Ballmer's best interests to categorically frame aspiration as a fraudulent front, that these two guys were, Cherney and Sandberg, were just, they built this company. They never had the intent of doing blah, blah, blah. And then they basically conned Steve Ballmer. They conned a bunch of other investors. They all lost money. And then I don't know why they did this other stuff. So it is in the same vein of like, hey, fake news. It's in the vein of discrediting that company completely to get people to believe this was all one big scam. And I don't understand what the Kawhi Leonard part of it was, but I got scammed. We all got scammed. They got scammed. Kawhi got scammed, all of that stuff. However, it has been characterized to me that the company itself, Aspiration, was doing okay. And they did have teams out there scouting and planting and doing all this other stuff. They were trying to be a legitimate company that was trying to do whatever, offset carbon, footprints and so on and so forth. Like these were people, the management team is like a high level management team pulled from other legitimate companies. There were employees there that were hoping to, do good things. And the way it was characterized to me was like these two guys, the CEO and the co-founder, kind of were the two rogues. The truth might be somewhere in the middle, right? That somehow there were people that believed in it. And somehow I think, Sandberg is the guy that was, pleaded guilty to fraud. He's the one that started putting, fraudulent documents and started to really pump up the stock price and tried to borrow against an inflated stock price. And that's where he got the fraud. But it's not like the entire company was in on it, right? The Sandberg is the only guy that got dinged. There are other investigations to see if other people were involved, but at this point, that hasn't led to anything. So I don't know. I think we have to take it with like, a critical eye, that somewhere in the middle of this, there are people who did things that were obviously wrong. There are people who were probably huge Clippers fans that were doing things obviously wrong. And then from there, I don't know, it does get murky. So but the bottom line to me is, I do think there were people that were legitimate in the company. And I do think that they saw this as like a what the hell kind of moment. Like, why are we doing it this way? So where the truth lies is, that'll come out, I think, at some point. And people like Pablo are going to do like the heavy digging, the heavy lifting to kind of really get to the the business side. Because I think for us, the cap circumvention side is all the people care about. They don't care about the business stuff, all the stuff that I just said, really. I think other people are going to take the business side of this thing and run with it and really figure out what the hell actually happened. I don't know. That's a long-winded way. And I think kind of lost my train of thought there for a second. But
well, I was going to move on to Ballmer going on ESPN, which surprised me. And called for an investigation, talked about how important circumvention is, basically said he was conned, and that's been their line, right? The Clippers statement, and Ballmer, throughout this interview said they were fooled, like they were conned. This was on, the criminal activity of this company, and they don't know what happened with Kawhi. Like there wasn't a connection between Ballmer investing in this company, which you had some good details in there about how he paid like a little bit more, for his investment than when you would have expected him to pay less based on the credibility he was giving them. And then Kawhi, again, getting all this money for doing nothing, which is really a smoking gun. If he was doing commercials for them and he was the face of this company, and you would understand it. I don't think there'd be any question about what was going on here. Does that provide enough proof for cap circumvention? That's going to be the question here. Yeah. So I think Ballmer was careful. There's a rule in the NBA where you can't own 5% of a company which a player is working with to endorse. So I think part of why Ballmer was saying I owned less than 3% of this team was to be very clear that I didn't own enough of this company for it to just flat out be, oh, hey, I'm an owner. He's an endorser, and this is an improper benefit. Therefore, it's cap circumvention. So if he did own 5%, then it would be flat out absolute slam dunk. Start losing draft picks, start getting suspensions, and all that stuff. Like that would be a open and shut case. He paid a premium on his $50 million in a $50 million investment, where the quick version is they were basically selling the shares at 10. Investors of his standing, generally, because companies like Aspiration want to pull them in and say, hey, Steve Ballmer's an investor, they get opportunity to invest at $9.50. He paid 11. So that's important because that gave him less share, gave him the right amount of money, $50 million, but for fewer shares. And that I think is what keeps him under the 5%. And it depends on the valuation. You get into like really, minutia business stuff, but he paid more for the shares. So he owned fewer shares for the money that he put in. So however the valuation came in, he was still at below 5%. Which could be on the up and up. Totally fine. I didn't violate. I know what the rules are. I can't own 5%, and I knew it, and I didn't do it. It could also be like, hey, how can I get you the $50 million without raising a red flag? So I don't know what side of that it lands on. It could be totally legit. It could be a little underhanded. That's a 50-50. It's like a 50-50 ball. But you cannot get past the, oh, wow, $50 million. They committed $48 million to Kawhi. What a coincidence, right? There's a famous saying in the legal world that there are no such things as coincidences. And so it is a coincidence that $50 million came in, almost $50 million was promised to go out. That's another major detail to me. Yeah.
That's a huge thing. Like, okay. And you can say coincidence, but why? The big question will always be, why did you do it in two pieces? Why did one of those pieces come into the management team, not go through the chief financial officer, not go through the chief legal officer, not go through the chief technology officer, not go through the chief marketing officer? Normally you go through all of those people and they say, okay, the deal, this is what the market normally pays a premium athlete for this kind of endorsement. This is what we should be expecting from him to get a return on our investment, and all of that stuff. A negotiated contract from the legal side saying these are the terms, you have to meet these terms or we can terminate the contract. And what ended up happening was the contract comes in from the CEO. that is basically, hey, this is done. None of you guys are doing any of that job. This is just done. This is the deal with Kawhi Leonard. It's 4 years. It's $28 million. Boom, done. Figure it out. So they're all like, this is a waste of our money. We wouldn't do this deal. So it's characterized to me as like, they were like, we don't have anything we would never use Kawhi Leonard for this. So we're not going to. Again, is that an exaggeration? Probably, but it's still like the people that I spoke to are like, we never would have done this deal in the first place, especially not how it's structured. And we never would have gone with Kawhi. Like, Kawhi Leonard is not a good endorser. Like, he's a New Balance guy. Have we seen how New Balance ads with Kawhi? He's either just standing there or he's not even in them anymore. Like, the new New Balance ads don't have Kawhi Leonard. It's like Cameron Brink and Shohei Ohtani and all that. Like, Kawhi is not a good pitch man. So I can believe some level of, why did you give us Kawhi Leonard? Like, what are we going to do with this guy? He's not, he doesn't do anything for us. He's not even on social media. What retweets is he going to give us? He has no personality, no plan, no nothing. So there's that piece. And then why on earth would one of the co-founders cut a side deal, not even with Aspiration? The deal with Sandberg was through a separate LLC, Sandberg's LLC, that he used as a feeder, that he paid Kawhi's LLC in stock. That's the $20 million deal. Why on earth would a co-founder run $20 million worth of a deal through a separate side entity, funnel it into Kawhi's LLC, and have it not even be part of Aspiration's kind of books or plan or commitment or anything like that? That to me is like really, really weird. That makes no sense. Why would a guy do that? So I don't understand why two people, one of them is a Democratic kind of higher up. They're working on a big Democratic platform right now. He's had two failed political runs, and politicians live in a world of quid pro quo. They know when you get money for something, you give something up. So why would he do that deal? Why would Sandberg do a deal for nothing, just give away stock for nothing, when he's the guy that committed fraud to pump up the value of his stock so he can borrow against it? Like, why is he giving shares away? Those two things make zero sense. And that's where I get stuck in this. Maybe, what other explanation is there other than this is an improper benefit and somehow a cap circumvention?
Yeah, and their only defense, and it's interesting, Mark Cuban went on Pablo's show and defended Ballmer. I think there's been a number of people who have run to Ballmer's defense with this notion that he didn't know, that he wasn't aware of what was going on. This is the company. These were fraudsters. They were deceiving them. And that, with all this detail that we're talking about here, seems to be the only way you could defend this. Because in my mind, as we stack up all the details here, Aspiration's benefit out of this is you get the association with the Clippers. They had the jersey patch, and Ballmer investing in all that. As he's one of the great investors, and it just gave them a level of credibility. And in exchange for that, you get sweetener effectively for Kawhi there. And that's how it was described in an email, a weird email that was sent by, I think it was Sandberg, or it was like, this is absolutely not sweetener. Anyone who's claiming that to be the case, that's crazy. And it was just out into the blue, as the employees described that. So much of this looks to me like a setup where Ballmer and the Clippers are given some amount of plausible deniability, and Kawhi gets that added benefit, and they get to have this defense if it finally came to light that, we didn't know, these were separate transactions, when the money lines up almost perfectly as you describe it there. So again, is that going to be enough for the lead to come down on this? I think, and I said this is my first reaction to the story of where it's going to go. What do the other owners want to do? Because I think they're ultimately going to dictate how hard the NBA and Adam Silver push on this, because they did an investigation previously that somehow found nothing, on the same topic. They said, okay, there were some owners who weren't happy about how it went down with Kawhi, and they were like, all right, if there's more information down the line, we'll look into this again. So they're going to look into it again, as you mentioned. I wonder where the other owners are on this, because if they want the Clippers slammed and docked 5 first into the 2030s and Kawhi's contract voided, and that's the prevailing sentiment around the league, I'm sure they'll find enough to get there. If the other owners are looking at it and saying, oh, we don't want to be looked at ourselves, we have some, shady stuff going on here too. Let's just do a slap on the wrist. We like Ballmer. He's good for the league. Let's keep it moving. I could see maybe like a first round pick being docked and they just move forward. I think it's going to come down to what the other owners want to see done here.
There is a board of governors meeting next week. And so we're going to find out pretty quickly. I'm sure that, let's just, for the sake of argument, say this is a cap circumvention and it's found to be so. It's not the only cap circumvention that's going on in the world. And it's funny because Pablo Torre on the Dan Patrick show was like, oh, I'm getting a lot of Jalen Brunson noise.
This is another popular Celtics fan desire to see the Knicks looked at next. Yeah.
And it's like, well, okay. Why Pablo Torre wouldn't say Jalen Brunson without having some backed up information of like, he's going to reveal something about Jalen Brunson, whether it be nothing happened untowards in that deal or something happened in that deal. Jalen took a notoriously like team friendly deal to stay with New York. And it's like, wow, I can't believe he did that. And it could be as simple as I believe in the team. I want a winner built around me. But, the Knicks are going to be kind of looked at. And
they were hit for tampering, right? For Brunson already.
They did. So it's, in New York, you can do all kinds of things. There's all kinds of places you can funnel money like that. Of course you can. There's going to be some pushback. There are some owners who do things by the book. There are some front offices that do things by the book, right? You don't expect certain teams, like I'll even throw the Celtics out there. I don't expect Brad Stevens, and maybe this is the front that he's built, and maybe he is like the shadiest guy in the world. We don't know, but Brad comes off as like Mr. By the book. Like I don't expect Brad Stevens to be, like looking at this and being like, okay, this is great, or we should be okay. I don't think a lot of teams operate in that same way. And I think everybody wants a level playing field. And in this new CBA, the second apron era, if owners just say, he's fine, don't worry about it. We kind of all do it. We don't want to push. Then they're kind of opening themselves up to the scrutiny. And either you just remove the rule or, you go some other way, but they've gone so deep into the hard cap. They've tried to tighten the financial reins. I can't imagine that owners are going to sit there and be like, okay with it just being out there that, yeah, it's okay that we kind of funnel these side deals. I think the money's getting tighter and everybody wants the same opportunity to get the stars because the stars are going to be moving a lot more, right? The second apron is going to force teams to start moving at least their secondary and third stars. So I don't know. I feel like there's going to be enough noise from teams, especially in markets that are like, we don't have the option. Look, who in San Antonio is going to give Victor Wembanyama, or whatever, some guy, like where are they going to go for, $30 million in sponsorship money? It's going to be tougher. So I don't think it's going to be a slap on the wrist. I think they're going to want to send a message if they can find that if this has happened.
Want to give a quick shout out here before we continue to PrizePicks, and football did start last night, and it's the perfect time to go over to PrizePicks, where we all make decisions every day, but on PrizePicks, being right can get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement this season on PrizePicks, where it's good to be right. And football season's great because we all do our fantasy teams, we all put them together for the full season, but it goes wrong fast. Guys get hurt. You pick the wrong players. I mean, if you pick McCaffrey, who's already dealing with a calf, and AJ Brown, who had 1 catch last night, your season's already not looking so great. But on PrizePicks, you get a chance to put a team together every single week. All you got to do is pick 2 to 6 player stat projections, and if you get your picks right, you could cash in. It's that simple to play over there, and they get the flex play, which means you can still cash out even if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. And they got the injury reboots. So if one of your player leaves the game in the first half and doesn't return, PrizePicks won't count it as a loss. That's so big with football where guys are going down left and right. So what are you thinking this weekend? Joe Burrow, more or less than 2.5 passing touchdowns. Josh Allen, more or less than 270 passing yards. All of those options and more available over on PrizePicks, where again, you can create a new team every week. And when you download the app today and use code CLNS, you get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS. You get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. And of course, you can mix and match sports. A lot going on right now. Women's basketball still, baseball, hockey and basketball will be back before you know it. But right now it's football time over on PrizePicks, where it's good to be, right? Again, download today, use code CLNS, and get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. So let's continue the conversation here. So what was the penalty with Joe Smith? It was 5 firsts.
Yeah, everybody goes
Contract
for 5
voided.
for, yeah. And I think there was a suspension.
Fine
Was
for
it
the
a suspension?
team,
Like, was
suspension
Kevin McHale
for
suspended?
executives, ownership. Yeah. So
Yeah.
all of that's on the table. And I think you said earlier in the pod, this could even be a bigger deal than the Joe Smith situation, which of course I think was him signing 2 or 3 consecutive small contracts in exchange for
Yeah.
a promised big contract
Right.
4 years down the line.
They were building up his bird rights. 3 small
Yeah.
contracts to build up his bird rights to then give him the big contract. Yeah.
Which, I mean, this definitely sounds more nefarious than that if everything's true.
Super important thing to know, and why this won't rise to that situation. The Minnesota situation was all smoking gun. As noted on the Hoop Collective podcast, the two agents started fighting with each other and sued each other, and basically all of this information came out, was documented, and the league basically had everything. It was not conjecture, it was not sources, it was not pieced together. Hey, this looks like this and this looks like that. The Kawhi situation looks like a certain thing, right? We've been talking about it. It blatant, but there probably isn't a piece of paper that Adam Silver can be handed that says, hey, it's Steve Ballmer. Let's circumvent the salary cap by giving Kawhi Leonard these secret deals. That's not going to be there. And while the league does have the authority to punish based on circumstantial evidence, if the parties involved do not have a good enough explanation, there's going to be, I think, a mitigation here where there is no direct link. There's going to be a circumstantial link, and they're going to say, we have no idea why Kawhi Leonard was promised $48 million to do nothing, and half of it completely secret. But, they're going to throw up their hands and be like, I don't know, these crazy fraudsters, they do crazy fraudulent things. But the league can still be like, yeah, we're not buying it. You can't dock 5 first rounders, but they can take away picks. As we've seen now with the CBA, the way it's structured, there is now the option for freezing picks. Could they freeze picks somewhere?
But that's the other thing. I mean, think about the fact that the Clippers, around the time of Kawhi signing, pretty much at the time of Kawhi signing, because they did the Paul George deal in partnership with this, gave up all their first round picks into the future. And it's like, okay, if we end up getting docked first round picks, they're all gone anyway. And I guess you can extend it beyond the window there, into the 2030s, and that's probably what will happen. But that's another layer to this, that they threw all their first round picks out the window anyway.
But they could move, like, they could treat it as a second apron thing and say, how when you're in the second apron for too long, they move your pick to the bottom. They can say, we're not going to take your picks, but we're going to make you pick 30th every year for the next 5 years or something like that. Or moving out when your next available pick that you have and the 5 available ones to you thereafter, can't trade them. They're frozen and they're moving to the bottom or whatever. Like
that makes
you
sense.
can
And
still-
I've never
you can
liked
still punish
throwing the draft picks out the window anyway, because then a guy doesn't get drafted who would have been in the draft because the picks are just gone.
Right. So I can see some sort of penalty where it's like harsh, but they can't go like full, throw the book at them, because Ballmer has plausible deniability, and that's going to be the key here. They have plausible deniability, and even though everybody's going to look at it and be like, yeah, it doesn't make sense to give Kawhi Leonard that money to do nothing. Doesn't make any sense at all. They can sit there and be like, but we can't prove that the Clippers made them do it. So that's going to be where, and you know what, to be honest, we're still at the beginning of this too. Pablo's story came out, and he's the major driver of this. 90% of what's happening is because of Pablo. I come in with 10% of the, filling in a couple of blanks of, hey, actually there's $20 million here that we didn't account for right away. And it's coming out of Sandberg's personal stash. And now I'm sure Pablo is, he's already following up, and other people now, because there's going to be other sources in the company. They're gonna be like, well, the first guy didn't say this really, and the second guy didn't say this really. So
Are we
we're
going to get more
start to
Karalis bombs here?
I don't think that's going to be my role in all of this. I fell into a fortunate position to know, the right people and get this. Like, why else would a Celtics reporter have a scoop on a Clippers thing? It's kind of like random, but I guess that's why you keep networks, right? So, but I think I filled in a couple of blanks, and I think other people are going to probably run with them. I think there's more. There is a lot of stuff that I know that is not reportable that I think, like, okay, there's definitely more to come that could, like, the NBA could, because the NBA doesn't need to make anything public, right? I'm a journalist. I have to, like, confirm things, and I can only say things that, I can attribute to the source. The NBA can go learn all of this stuff and just keep it private and be like, oh, okay, we got you. So I do think that the NBA will find out some things. I do think that there's more to come public at some point, and we'll see if any of that stuff actually connects the Clippers a little bit more closely to this and leads to any kind of punishment.
Yeah, and I'd have to imagine that's going to take some time here. And the most consequential penalty of all would obviously be Kawhi's contract being voided and him entering free agency, which would be a unimaginable, situation to happen, whether it's before the season or even mid-season or next summer, whenever that would be. He becomes a free agent at that point. He's already in such an interesting spot in his career where, he's not consistently available, and he hasn't pushed them to any championship level or anything like that.
Right. Can I ask you a question here? An honest question here. Sorry. Kawhi Leonard is due $50 million this year, $50 million next year. If the league said, hey, we're going to void Kawhi's contract, what do you think the Clippers' reaction is going to be? You think the Clippers are going to be like, oh no, please don't void $50 million and get $50 million off of our books? That would be such a shame. Like,
right.
I think at that point,
they don't even go there.
Like, who cares? I don't actually think that voiding Kawhi Leonard's contract at this point of his career, what he can give you, I don't think that's a punishment for the Clippers. You might actually be doing them a favor. He's 34. Like, he's done. It's over. He should be retiring. He doesn't have a full run in him anymore. So they could just be like, hey, sure, void. Like, if I'm the Clippers, I'd be like, yeah, man, we did this. We should, please don't, void his contract. Oh no, my God, please. And like,
that's what we'll accept. Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? So, I mean, I'm being kind of a jerk here, but like, I do think that looking at the actual punishment, what would Kawhi Leonard get on the open market at this point?
Mid-level.
So like, yeah, maybe a team would be like, oh, great, we can sign Kawhi and he'd be our third guy, and maybe he could make a difference, and you could give him like the Porzingis treatment that the Celtics have been giving for the past couple of years, and like, very sporadic, and you don't, you're going to play 50 games in a season at the most, 40 something games. We're going to try to put you in bubble wrap and unveil you during the postseason. You could do that at the mid-level, sure, maybe, but the Clippers voiding $50 million, looking at their cap sheet, they'd be like, I think they'd be thrilled.
It's an interesting take on it for sure. I wonder what the other teams would think. The Celtics will have the mid-level next summer. So I think there'd be a lot of interest in him at that price. Now, if he want to go somewhere else at that price, would he retire? I don't know. It'll all be very interesting if that's the direction it goes in. But it's a fair point from the Clippers' perspective, especially since they just let Paul George walk, and it actually worked out for them pretty well. So they have been, as much as they've thrown money into this whole thing, victims of the second apron as well, and have had to let George go and figure some stuff out. They haven't continued to spend beyond that level as the Celtics did here, and ultimately had a real back in. When it comes to that conversation, I'm still more of the mind of this is a tax thing for a team like the Celtics as much as it is a second apron thing. But a lot of teams have been hit by that. And that's why I understand why a lot of fans are going in that direction. And as you said, a lot of, teams are probably going to think, all right, we've been hit so hard by the second apron and cap situation. We're going to go after the Clippers for doing what they did here to circumvent what's already becoming a much tougher cap. So it'll be interesting to see what ends up happening here. I don't see avoiding either. I definitely see draft picks going out. The suspensions or whatever, they'll come down to what wrongdoing they find by each individual person here. But that would be the most fascinating fallout if Kawhi just becomes a free agent to me. Maybe the Clippers wouldn't care, but I think a lot of other teams would be interested.
Yeah, look, if Kawhi hits free agency, I don't know, at 30, in the mid 30s with his injury history, there'll be some interest because he's better than, when you look at mid-level guys, that would be interesting. I don't know. I think the Clippers have very obviously like loaded up for like they're making their one last desperate push. That's why James Harden is back, but that's why Harden's back on 2 years, right? And the second is a player option. So that's why they're all short-terming it, and that's why like I like what the Clippers have done in the offseason, like, but everybody's old and
they were really good last year.
Yeah, like they did have a much better than expected season last year. So I think the draft pick thing would be the worst because and I'm not sure exactly when they start controlling their own drafts in a significant way.
29 and 30 are going to Philly, and then after that they probably have, but I'll double check on that.
So like I said, they're in their last desperate push. They're, Kawhi at some point soon is going away. Harden is 36. He's going away. Brook Lopez is 37. Nick Batum is 36. Those guys and Bradley Beal might as well be 36. He's 32, but might as well be. These guys are all going away soon, fairly soon. So their rebuilding is coming. And if this leads to either the loss of draft picks or the freezing of draft picks or dropping their draft picks to the bottom of the draft, whatever the punishment is or may be, that's where you hit them because you're now making it so their future is in jeopardy here. And that's what they don't want. But at the same time, I do understand this notion that the Intuit Dome is new. It is a premier play. Isn't the All-Star game there?
Yeah.
The All-Star game's there this year, right? So this is like, a really tough year for the Intuit Dome and the Clippers to be, at the center of all of this. The league probably is like, God, of all the teams, this is not the one we wanted this to happen to. So I can understand the league being like, maybe wanting to just kind of like brush this off or put it off and say, hey, we're investigating. It's going to take a long time. Push it past the All-Star game. And then after the All-Star game, maybe they want to get it done with and maybe not have it be a question during the All-Star game. I don't know, but the Clippers are an important team now. They have the premier new facility along with like the Chase center, and they are.
They got the wall.
They've got one of the own. They got the one owner. They've got one owner that owns it. Like they don't have a. They have a face. It's a great situation in a premier market that they probably want to have two premier teams in LA, so they always get Los Angeles ratings. I can see them like not wanting to ruin that, but hey, if this is how it is, if the wrongdoing is as obvious as it seems, you got to do something, and so it's going to be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, and how long it'll take. Again, this could take a little while here as they just start this investigation. I do want to talk some Celtics before we get out of here, of course, and I'm sure that people want to hear where we're at before the training camp gets started later this month. But I want to give a shout out as well to GameTime, who are back here. And again, we need your support with GameTime. It's a great time of year to go to concerts, events, all the different stuff that's going on, including sports rolling back in, football again underway. If you want to go see the Patriots on Sunday down at Gillette, GameTime's the spot to go. And I've used this app for years, even before we partnered with them here at CLNS, because it's just such a great experience. The panoramic views of your seats are incredible. That was like something that was just so innovative that they did, where you're able to see exactly what you're going to see from your seats, especially at the concerts you go to. We've been at the House of Blues, John. It's tough to tell what you're going to be looking at when you're there, if you're in a seat or you're upstairs or something. And they give you a great view of where your seat's going to be, regardless of the venue. That's my favorite feature over there. They also have zone deals. Save even more when you choose a section like GameTime. Choose your seats. Favorites, like new ticket deals before anyone else finds out by following your favorite teams in the GameTime app and receiving alerts. It's a great feature. And know your total up front. That's the big one. No surprise fees at checkout, with fees included in the price that you see. And if you don't get the lowest price with their lowest price guarantee, they'll credit you 110% of the difference. Awesome experience over on GameTime, and you can get $20 off your first purchase when you use the code CLNS, and let them know we sent you. This is a big time for us and GameTime. So if you're thinking about going to any event, download the app, create the account, you'll get $20 off. So you're getting something in it too to support CLNS and GameTime here. So $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply over on GameTime. Create an account, use that code CLNS over there. Again, big time over at GameTime. So if you're thinking about going anything, please give them a shot over there. It's an awesome experience. So with the Celtics, we're about 4 weeks, maybe less, from training camp getting started here. I think the roster's the roster at this point. We can maybe think about guys they might throw in as training camp invites. The Simons thing continues to be a question here, but I would have to guess this is going to be the team here. And so where are you at on this roster?
I mean, obviously it's not a great roster. Although, there are the front court is obviously the big, no pun intended, big issue. There's been people have been talking about who's going to be the starting center. I know a lot of people have been talking about Nemish Queta as the just flat out, he's going to be the starter.
I'm the Queta guy.
I know you're a big Queta guy. And he's playing well in Eurobasket. It's my biggest question for him right now is how much of this is translatable to the NBA? Like it's a different role with Portugal, more of a main role, getting the ball a lot and being able to make his move,
turnaround jumpers, threes, a lot of stuff. I don't think
all that stuff is new. That's great. But how does that translate to the Boston Celtics with, Jaylen Brown and Derek White and all those guys? How does that translate? Does he have the green light to do these things? Can he do these things against NBA defenses? The level of talent in the NBA is better. The way you get defended is a little bit different. So give him full marks for being, I said before, I did a Q&A on my podcast. People were like, what do you want to see from Queta in Eurobasket? I said, anything. Show me anything. And he's showing a lot. So great. That's awesome. So if he can continue this and rise and earn that starting center spot, then great, because now that brings you Boucher off the bench, which is a better role and gives you some,
So you're going Hauser, Brown, Queta in that case in the front court.
I think, okay, so Derek White, obviously.
Pritchard.
I've been saying Pritchard off the bench.
Okay.
I've been
Interesting.
saying Pritchard off the bench because I think you want to have Derek White or Jaylen Brown on the floor at all times. Just to me, from a rotation perspective, it makes more sense to start Pritchard off the bench and sub him in for Derek White. And then you sub in Derek White for Jaylen Brown, and that's your staggering of Jaylen and Derek. Like, it's not that I don't think Peyton has earned a starting spot. You certainly, if you want to start him, that's fine with me. I'm not arguing that. But I think just from a perspective of handling the ball, distributing the ball, being a point guard, understanding what you're trying to do, I'd rather play Anthony Simons off the ball, but that does make them super, super small, which is a problem. It just is what it is. If Simons is on the team to start the season, you just have to deal with that. But Pritchard coming off the bench for Derek White at the 7-minute mark. And then Derek subs in for Jaylen at the 2 or 3 minute mark, that TV timeout. Then you just alternate, and then they both finish the quarters, and that's how you just run your half. So that's why I'm thinking Pritchard off the bench and Simons more as a starter at the 2. He's more of a shooter. I think I would rather have Simons' scoring ability there to kind of like buoy the Derek White and Peyton Pritchard, just because those guys are much better passers. I think just having that guy as a spot up guy kind of makes a little bit more sense, kind of taking some of the scoring pressure off of Jaylen Brown because he's a guy you're going to have to guard. So maybe the double teams aren't as frequent for Jaylen Brown. So I think Derek, Simons, Jaylen. If we're going to go Kata, then that does leave a fourth, maybe it is Hauser. That just might end up being how it goes. Is Hauser as
and he's sturdy. He's played with all these guys. It's funny if before Boucher got into the mix, they had the White, Pritchard, Hauser, Kata, Brown possibility, and that 5 is played together.
Let's not throw out the possibility of Boucher at the 4. Starting Boucher and Kata together.
Well, that's where my mind went once they signed Boucher, bringing Hauser off the bench and having Boucher play at the 4 so they have more size. I'm a start Pritchard guy just because I think, 1, he's earned it. 2, out of all the things I'm optimistic about with this team, and, there's a handful, Pritchard having a huge year is at the top of my list with more opportunity and more ball handling and just, Tatum being out of the mix and them needing more creation. I'm about as confident about Pritchard having a breakout massive year that boosts them to, a greater season than people think they're capable of than pretty much anything here, including Jaylen, who I'm interested in seeing leading the way here. But to your point, I think it's going to be important to not put everything on Jaylen and having all the pressure on him to lead them through the Tatumless season. I think that's going to be key. If he tries to do too much, I think that's going to be the worst case scenario of this team. And it's probably going to be a difficult season for him if that's the case. So I understand the lineup balance argument. That's probably the best one to me. I don't, there's a lot of fans I've seen who want to start Simons to show him off or, want Pritchard on the bench because that's where he's been. I think the best argument is the one you made that, they need some lineup balance here because if it is Pritchard, White, Brown, Kata starting and Hauser, let's say, there's really not a lot off the bench at that point. Like Garza, Boucher, Simons, like it gets pretty thin fast. And there's going to be some swing guys like Sharman and some of the other young guys here who they're going to need at least one of those unknowns to step up to have a good second unit here because they're just not a super deep team right now. The Boucher thing helped a lot though.
Yeah, I think so. And look, there are a couple of different goals here, and this is what makes this season very, very interesting. But also like people who are watching and listening want the Celtics to win, right? I think by and large, a vast majority of everybody who's paying attention to you.
Yeah, where are you at on the tank argument?
I don't think you can tank, because they're too good to tank. I think the Celtics are not as good as the good teams in the league and not as bad as the bad teams in the league, which puts them right in the middle of the pack. Because you still have Jaylen, you still have Derek, you still have Peyton. Like Simons, for all of we're so dismissive of him because it's like he's going to be gone. He's still a high level scorer.
I want to see him stay.
So he is a high level scorer, and hey, there is a world where he stays. they are good enough, and I think they're going to play hard enough where all of the tanking teams, right, the obvious lottery teams, the Celtics will not be, when they're fully healthy, in that group. What changes to me, the only time tanking changes to me is if Jalen pulls a hammy, sprains an ankle, something like that, right? Something that's just entirely possible in a season, especially with Jalen, who's never really played the full 82. If something happens, something tends to happen to him somewhere along the way.
And he's coming off the surgery and all that, yeah.
Right. So if something happens that keeps him out for a month, that could change a lot of things. And if he's out for a while and then the Celtics win total is depressed because they're hurt and they go from middle of the road to kind of down. Now, if it's March and they are fighting for a play-in, I know that Jalen and Derek and Joe Mazzulla are going to be like super, super competitive. We got to fight. We got to fight to win. I'm going to be like, look, man, the last thing we need is a 7, 8, 9, 10 seed playing extra games to go up against the 1 seed, to not be good enough and just losing the first round. At that point, did Jalen play his 65 games? If he needs to get to 65, if he's having an all NBA year, get him his awards as a reward. If he's not, then just sit him. You do need to figure out Luka Garza. You do need to figure out Josh Minot. You do need to figure out these guys. Baylor Shireman, I'll throw him in the mix. Jordan Walsh, I'll throw him into the mix. You need to figure out if these guys are truly part of your future, because the Celtics have a small window left, right? This is the final year of Jaylen Brown in his 20s in the NBA. Next season, Jaylen Brown will be 30, and that's the number, right? Derek White is already 31. So Jason Tatum is in his prime, but he's at 27. He's going to miss most, if not all, of this season. So he'll be 20. You only get a couple more years of him in his 20s. It's starting. We're starting to see the end of the road with this team, I hate to say. So the window that's left is small. You need to figure out, is Anthony Simons being traded or not? If he is, you got to make that move. Is Shireman really a guy you can count on in the future? What about Xavier Tillman? We haven't talked about Xavier Tillman at all, but like Garza, Minot, all of those guys. What do these guys have? Can they be? I look at the Indiana Pacers a lot. Can they be Indiana type depth? Can they take their number 1, number 2 guys and have then around them 3 through 10 be somewhat equal talent level, kind of interchangeable, really try hard guys that make just the right amount of money to keep you right in that sweet spot in the second apron era? Can you find those guys to get you forward and extend this window, give you 2-3 more years before we look at 32-year-old Jaylen Brown and trading him at some point to maximize the return on a rebuild? And Jason Tatum, when do you move him to maximize the return on a rebuild? Like, that's not anything anybody wants to hear now, but it has to be part of the long-term planning, because at some point those guys go away.
That's why I look at this year, and there won't be championship contention this year. There won't be high-level winning, I think, pretty obviously. But everything that happens this year has to set up being back in 2027 at that point.
Yeah.
26, 27. So you got to find out what you have among the young guys. You got to figure out whether you can make Tatum, Brown, and other stuff be the nucleus of what you're doing here. And obviously, I don't expect Tatum back this year. Even if he is for a week or two, I don't think you're going to get many answers from that. So regardless of whether he's back for a little bit or not, you got to figure out what's going to be around them that following year. And they don't have a ton of tools. Mid-level doesn't get you a ton. They have draft picks, but a couple of them are going out the window. So they don't have great tools to add to this roster beyond what they already have here. So I understand the average fan who especially looks at Celtics history and all the different times they've gotten lucky in the draft and set up their next era with a top level draft pick here and say, all right, if we can get a top pick this season, one of the best rookies in this class, add it to the mix, and it's go time again. You're ending this Tatum Brown era. while also transitioning into a next era. That's the best case scenario. But the way the lottery rules are now, even if you try to tank, that's not guaranteed. So I
Right.
think you just go into the season, try to compete, react to everything that happens, as you said, a Brown injury or whatever else could pop up, and make decisions on the fly. And I think they've already done that, reacting to the losses they made and putting this team on the court that is decent, but obviously isn't in the best position to win. I don't think, especially at center, they've put the best team possible on the floor for this season. And I think that's intentional.
Yes, it is intentional. You know, and people will look at the Dallas Mavericks and be like, look at what can happen if you just back into the draft, right? Like they'll I don't know
that
how
could happen. It's not likely, but it could happen.
But I don't know. I think it is just incredibly important to figure out the pieces you have around your stars, whether the guys you have work out or not. Like, you need to figure out if they work or not, right? So is Jordan Walsh work or not? I don't expect Boucher to stick around for a long, but like, do these other guys work or not? I will push back a little bit on the Jason Tatum thing, because I do have like a fair optimism that he can be available to play at some point during this season. And I think if he is, like, and when I say that, it's not rushing him back. I'm saying that I do think that the doctors, the trainers, everybody involved will look at it and be like, he is fully healed. He is fully ready. He's ready to get back onto the practice court. He is ramped up and he is ready to play an NBA basketball game in a natural amount of time. And I do believe that the natural amount of time is going to lead him back onto the court at some point towards the end of this season. And I think any opportunity you can get him out there counts as rehab, where you get him back into NBA basketball, you get his body back used to the grind, you let him shake off some of the rust. And why not let him run some pick and roll with Luka Garza? Why not let him run some pick and roll with Josh Minot spotting up or something like that? You know, like, why not get him some reps with some of these new guys? We're sitting here talking about, we need to figure out, can these guys play with Jason Tatum? If he's available, fully healthy, fully cleared, no risk other than the natural risk of playing basketball that everybody faces. Mm-hmm. If he's available, then let's see it. Let's see it. Why not? And I'm not saying playing 40 minutes. I'm saying 20 minutes. Like, I'm not saying, hey, he could come back and maybe that's going to fuel a playoff run. That's right. Certainly, there's a universe where that may be true, but I'm looking at it. If he comes back, if he's ready, then get him ready. Just take this as the next step of his rehab. Get him ready. Get him some live action, because there's nothing that compares to live action basketball. Get him a few reps with these guys just so you can kind of see, and you can get Tatum's input and be like, I like this. I like what he did. I didn't like this. And it can help you make decisions. So anything that can help you make those decisions, because I'm looking at 2028 as maybe the most likely year for a championship for this team. Get Tatum that one full year. Maybe he's, that one full year to come back from the Achilles. And then after that, that's your last, like, I think, real chance at winning a championship. Maybe 27 is a real chance, but 28, I think, is where I'm looking at. If the Celtics win another championship in this era, I think 28 is going to be the one. So let's figure this stuff out now so you can get to that point.
Yeah, and he'll need that regardless of whether it's in the spring or in the fall. You'd love to give him more time just out of safety and precaution. That's where I'm coming at it from, for all the different things that could happen if he comes back, Achilles or not. We've seen other guys come back from Achilles and injure other things. I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on what the best route is for recovering, but it seems like to me the best outcome has been for the guys who have missed more time and taken it slow. So, they'll make a decision, and they haven't closed the door on it, and I think that's telling. And if he does come back, I'm sure, as you mentioned, he'll have full clearance, and, there'll be assuredness that that's the right decision. And there does need to be some ramp-up process at some point. So whether that comes now or later, you're not going to see the best version of Tatum until down the line. So we'll see what happens there. Again, I don't think there should be hope in fans' eyes that he's going to come back and lead them into greatness this year. It'll be a ramp-up process of some kind whenever that does happen. That is all I got. Is there anything else you're interested in this season? Anything else that appeals to you storyline wise? Like, what's going to be maybe something we haven't mentioned that will be worth watching in training camp or, throughout the course of the season? Like, what's going to interest fans most, you think?
I think the other potentially big story from this season is Jaylen Brown as the main guy. I think that's something to watch, because not only is it, hey, how does he do leading this team on his own, and how does that impact how he feels when Tatum comes back and all of that stuff? I'm curious to see how Jaylen handles that if it goes really well, because I think we've seen all along that he's talked about sacrifice. I make my sacrifices for the team, and he very clearly says
He's done
that
in
he
about
can
2 or 3 interviews. Yeah.
that he can be a better player. He can do a lot more, and that he's holding back because that's not what the team needs him to do. I think that's pretty evident. So here's a guy who's 29. He's getting his kind of wish to be the number one guy. There's no that your role now is you're the best player on this team. So go. If it goes well, right? And he's going to get thrown a ton of double teams, and he's going to have to handle that stuff. And it's going to be a lot of work. It's not just going to, when we talk about more opportunity, that also means more defensive attention. He's going to get defenses that he hasn't seen in the NBA for extended periods of time. If he handles all that well, shoots the ball well, plays well, makes a second team all NBA, let's say, and comes out of this season and says, wow, man, I can be the number one guy. I knew it. I believe it. I believed it all along. And here it is. Proof. What does Jaylen do with that information? Does he just lean back in and be like, hey, I'm going to go back. I'm comfortable. I've proven it. I'm going to go and be in this role next to Jason Tatum and just be comfortable with that? That's possible. Or is he going to say, I turn 30 before the next season. I'm under contract for a few more years, but I need to see, okay, I've proven that I can be the number one guy. Can I be the number one guy and lead a team to a championship? I need to see that. And I wonder, I'm not saying I expect it. I'm just saying I wonder if Jaylen has an amazing season and we look at it and be like, wow, ultimate, like best Jaylen Brown we've ever seen. Is he going to go to the team and say, look, man, I need to spread my wings. I need you guys to find me a team that needs a number one, that wants me as their number one, and let's work out a trade. And I just wonder if that's going to be any of the thought process. It may not be. I'm not saying that's how he thinks or any of that stuff, but in my head, one of the things that I'm watching is, if that happens, how does Jaylen Brown react?
Well, the biggest reason, and we had that discussion this summer, that I wanted to see Jaylen stay here is now that Tatum has torn his Achilles and there's some uncertainty over his future and what he's going to be when he comes back. I think it makes Jaylen all the more important because there might have to be some reorganization of how the team structured, at least initially, and their play style is going to have to change this year. And I think that's the biggest thing I'm watching for this year. The Jaylen one's a great storyline. I think on the surface, especially nationally, that's going to be what everyone's watching for from this team, what he's able to do in that role. On a basketball play style level, I'm so curious to see how they change without Tatum and what he does and how they played around him. He was available every game since 2018 in a major role, and now they're going to have to play differently. For Jaylen to have the kind of year you're describing, they're going to have to run. They're going to have to be a faster paced team. They're going to have to be a team that's probably more aggressive defensively. And those are big diversions from the way they've played under Joe, at least the last 2 years. And the sense I've gotten is that they're willing to change that. They already view last year is that they've made certain adjustments to suit certain personnel. Brad has on multiple occasions said that they need to tailor what they're doing to their personnel. So I want to see that in action. And I think that's the only way they're going to be successful this year. If they're playing 3 guards like you've described, and, Jaylen's running the floor, which he is a style he wants to play, Pritchard wants to play. It's going to be a whole different brand of Celtics basketball this year compared to what we've watched the last few years. And I actually think it might be a little more fun to watch. The team won't be more successful. But I think that style of basketball makes me think of those Isaiah years and how they played, with Brad. That could be a lot more enjoyable to watch just visually than line up the mismatch, throw it to
Yeah.
Porzingis in the post, walk it up the floor. Like, there were a lot of frustrating aspects of last year's team, as awesome as they were to watch. So, before Brown even gets to the point where he's like, let me spread my wings, let me, see what else is out there, it might be a discussion of this might actually have to build around Jalen at that point, if that's the way this goes. And, where's Tatum fitting in at that point? That might not be realistic given who Tatum is, and what he's built here capital-wise. But I think that's where that conversation goes before they talk about breaking these guys up. Because, again, I think they've realized and the team has realized to some degree, and there's a cap reality here that they have to deal with. But those two need each other, I think. And especially with Tatum coming back and there being uncertainty over who he's going to be at that point, he's going to need Jalen at least initially. And, of course, we'll see how healthy Jalen is this year, too, coming off the meniscus. But that's always the conversation, right? Those two making it work. They've been so amicable. When you think of everything those two have gone through and what they've won and what they've lost in different years, and personally all the highs and lows that they've both been through in their careers, it's amazing, especially comparing it to other stars. Kobe, Shaq's the big one there, that they've made it work and they've been willing to put up with the dynamic of what goes on when you have two stars on the same team as long as they have here. And so that does make me optimistic that that's what they're going to continue to do here. But does the cap change that? That's been the big question going back to the beginning of this offseason. Is for years, I think Brad's mindset has been, regardless of what we do around these two, if we have Tatum and we have Brown, we're going to be a certain level of competitiveness and we'll figure out the rest from there. Is that still possible in this new cap environment? I think that's going to be another question beyond all the ones we've laid out going forward.
Yeah, that's going to be the tough. There's so many questions. There are so many questions. And I am kind of like, I do feel like I just expect Tatum to be back and be himself. I don't think his play style is so reliant on explosiveness that we'll see that much of a difference, but you never know. I mean, it is an Achilles, and I'm taking a lot of things where I take his youth and I've been talking about the procedure that he had done and how quickly, and I'm like, this all adds up to, I just think Tatum's going to come back and be Tatum. But you never know. You do never know. There are unanswered questions, right? Like, there's just, no matter how much confidence you have in something, that doesn't mean that it's actually going to come to pass. So I do think that, you have to acknowledge that maybe Tatum isn't what he was. And a scenario where Jalen becomes the number one guy and Jason becomes the number two guy is, I can't say that's out of the question. So that is something to look for. But as far as the play style goes, I do agree that it's going to have to be a lot more like give and go. I want to see a lot more give and go with Jalen, because he's going to have, like I said, he's going to get double teamed like crazy. So it's going to have to be a lot more cutting.
The cutting's the big one. Yeah.
Even if they don't run necessarily, the offense has to start at like 17 on the shot clock, 18 on the shot clock. You got to get that ball up the floor other than walking it, because they just don't have the same level of talent. They had so much talent last 2 years, where you just, I wanted them to play faster, but come down, survey the floor, find the mismatch, because there was a mismatch everywhere. That's no longer the case. So cut. Like, I want to see those baseline cuts again. I want to see give, go, collapse the defense, kick to the corner. Like, I want to see a lot of passing. I want to see the pace can
play to set up a guy like Hauser. I mean, Hauser had a solid year looking back on it, but that's a guy you're going to have to get going this year, because he's going to be one of the strengths of your roster.
Yeah. And I do think that they know that, because, like I said, the talent level has dropped. And so the only way to shake guys free now is to move the defense. Before, you get guys free by just like, hey, I'm just going to put my elbow on this guy, give me the ball here, and I'm just going to make my move, because everybody on the floor could do that. Now you have to move the player, you have to move the ball, you have to move, without the ball. So I do expect a faster play style, just because that's the only way they're going to get the open shots now.
He's John Karalis. Check out his podcast, Locked On Celtics, which comes out just about every day, especially during the season. Boston Sports Journal has the great report out on the Kawhi Leonard saga. Great conversation here. Great to finally have you on the Garden Report here and show some love to our channels. Go over there, subscribe, CLNS Media, Celtics All Access, Patriots coverage on Sunday coming up over on the Patriots Press Pass, where they're just killing it. A great preview with Mina Kimes out over there of their season. And check out PrizePicks, check out GameTime, CLNS, the code to use on both of those. And once again, thanks for being here, John, and we'll be back next week.
No one's sneaking a vegan brownie by me, I'll tell you that.
Okay, you know what, John? We're going to do it.
You have to feel that way too, Bobby.
I have to feel that way. Let's
Yeah.
fly out over and make Luke your first center.
Bobby, we gave you Luke an hour early. We're not going to end this on a damn conversation about Luke